The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Of the McGee Uncensored Podcast. I'm your host, McGee, the host and creator of a podcast that 5 people listen to, but they are a loyal bunch, and they like listening, and they get a good laugh. On this episode, I'll be talking about a story that took place in high school that I had almost forgot about, because I don't speak to a lot of people from high school as much anymore to bring up the scenarios and the hey, remember when this happened? I don't bump into too many people nowadays, so this is a pretty good one, I think. So I'm going to retell it and do my best to put you in that moment of when this all took place. Now, this took place junior year of high school. This is probably a month, barely 2 months into the school year. We're talking 1998, folks. And this is the infamous stink bomb incident that took place in Mrs. Monahan's English class. Honors English class. Well, we were not honors student that day. Well, some weren't. The rest of us were. And it's a shame that some of you who may listen to this don't know these individuals personally who took part in this. I'll give it a little bit of a backstory and description as best I can. Now, the guy who brought the material in, or the stink bomb, whatever it was put in, it was like in a plastic, like almost like you've used those eye drops that you rip, like those plastic eye drops. Anyway, who cares about that? Jeff Cromulak. Now, Cromulak, not a bad guy, but somewhat of a schemer. I think we could fairly accurately say that about him. I remember, and he could be full of shit sometimes. A lot of the times. He had brought a watch to school one day, and according to him, he could turn on the TVs in the classroom with the watch. And I said, all right, try it. And he tried it, and it didn't work. And he, made some excuse, which he's always good at doing, as to why it didn't work. I mean, there's a couple times that dude said some things in public that got back to the people he said it about, and they must beat his ass in high school. But I think they looked and said, not really going to bother with this. Light work. But like I said, he was always up to something. It seemed like he was always up to something. And he had brought the stink bombs, multiple, to school. And he hid it in his backpack, and, it was as if he brought a bomb. But, obviously not a real one, but I was like, what's he going to do with this? I don't know if he thought that if him bringing it, if he was calling somebody's bluff. I don't know. But he brings it, obviously. I see it, I'm like, this is, at the time, I'm going back 18 years now, I'm thinking, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to go near this stuff. I'm not going to touch it. So, we have English class in the morning. And he brings it in. He wraps it up in notebook paper. And he throws it in the back of the classroom. Now, he attempts to step on it. It doesn't break. He's not that strong. With the feet, I guess. The foot stomp. But lo and behold, there's a savior that comes to make sure that this stink bomb goes off. And Dave Ngani steps up to the plate, lifts his leg very high in the air, as if he's at the bat, stomps down, busts open the capsule, and an odor emanates and fills up the classroom. Now, I will say that it was not, to my remembering, was not a very overpowering odor, but it was bad, like bad BO. And there were some people in high school that had bad BO, so you could have just played it off as one of them. But somebody had picked it up, threw it in a garbage can. That's smart. Way to just put your evidence in plain eye view there. So as the class begins, and Mrs. Monahan comes in, and she's talking, and I don't know, somebody's making a fuss. Somebody always, some complainer making a fuss. And you could tell that the smell was starting to get to the front of the classroom. And Mrs. Monahan's trying to play it off. She's like, oh, could it be perhaps a dead animal outside? Or maybe the vent, blaming on the vent. And I'm not saying she's naive. She's a nice woman, don't get me wrong. She's just, it's for posture, her being part of the story because it took in her classroom. And that's, we're just sitting there. Now, class ends up having to be moved into the auditorium because the ungodly smell, well, I don't think it was ungodly. I just remember, the smell, I guess, became unbearable for some. I mean, it might irritate it. I don't know. We really wasn't exposed to it because when it busted in the back of the classroom, it wasn't there long. And it was thrown into the garbage can. So we take our lesson to the auditorium. And we are sitting there, and I don't remember what the lesson was about. I just remember the events that led up to us getting there. The principal walks in, always a man of honor, and he goes up to Mrs. Monahan and tells her, what the situation is, and the look of shock on her face that students would do this, which I'm sure students have done a hell of a lot worse and continue to do a hell of a lot worse in schools. I get it. It was tomfoolery, whatever. It wasn't as if anything was really ruined. But yes, maybe I guess we could have behaved a little bit better. I don't know. But I tell you what, I didn't have anything to do with it. And Inspector Clouseau, a.k.a. Janitor Paul Kuzman, located the stink bomb in the trash can. So, what our next step was, we were instructed to write on paper who the criminals were. And I had to be truthful, because if you weren't, then I'm sure something else would have been done. But I was truthful, and I had to. It wasn't as if I was ratting them out. I mean, overwhelmingly, it ended up being, I think, the whole entire classroom turned both people in. And I was curious I wonder if anybody would have turned me in. I kind of was always curious, because some people, I'm sure, may have wrote my name on her, but I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't that stupid. I did some goofy things, but nothing to the point where I'm going to do something dumb like that. When you're in school 8 hours a day, it's boring. You got to do something to entertain yourself. I did things to entertain people, not being anything stupid. And I wasn't a bad person. Anyway, so they ended up getting suspended 3 days. And it wasn't as if I found this display of juvenile behavior, egregious, or I guess it was uncalled for. But if you messed with Mrs. Monahan, she was going to take you to the highest authority. She was going to fight you. Let me tell you what. Bet your bippy. Clearly looking back, it was a stupid thing to do, that these guys did. And I'm sure a lot of people could look back in their lives and go, that was a stupid thing, or we could all look back at stupid things we've done. I honestly don't know if it necessarily should have been suspension, You know, they got rid of ISS years prior, but ISS. It wasn't as if they really defaced school property. They didn't have to bring in CSI to put a black light over the room to see, where fingerprints were and footprints were. Kind of defending people, but I mean, look, it was harmless. It really was. But if it never happened, then I wouldn't have something to talk about on this podcast, the McGee Uncensored podcast. And for that, I'm very thankful. Look, everyone was a rat that day. It wasn't as if we had a choice to, not do anything. I mean, something was going to end up being done. And nobody really took a fall because, the two morons, it wasn't if they collaborated on it. But again, he should have known better to step. I don't know why he did that. You want to talk about a guy that makes up stories. He should be a writer because he's all fiction. The one great thing about me is sitting back and observing all the stupidity that I witnessed that I can now talk about little by little on here for your enjoyment and for your listening pleasure. So anyone who listens to this that actually went back, who was in high school at the time and remembers it, feel free to comment on it. It was hilarious. I don't care, but it was hilarious. Hope this story entertained you for a couple minutes out of your day when you're bored. Remember to follow me on Twitter, at McGee Uncensored. Same on Instagram, McGee Uncensored. My blog, McGeeUncensored.blogspot.com. So thanks for listening, and until next time.